Right.
Just hard to believe we're even talking about this.
Right.
But we now have 2 court decisions in the last few days that are basically saying, no way, this is going to happen. There was a federal judge's decision. It's a Louisiana case. And the federal judge said Joe Biden's bid for this is an abuse of power and a threat to democracy. So I've heard that phrase before. So-and-so is a threat to democracy. Right. And then there was the second case just in the last day or so, basically saying the same thing, that the president does not have the power to make these kinds of decisions. This is not what the American people want.
No.
These decisions are based on, for instance, saving the integrity of girls' sports.
Right.
So some guy can say, I feel like a girl today, I want to compete on a girls' team. Or some guy can say, I feel like a girl, I want to use the girls' washroom or girls' locker room. It's that kind of insanity we're dealing with today. Tim, the only thing I find sad, we have to go to court to fight this.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it is, but those are 2 good victories. You're right. Biden is pushing this transgender. He just pushing it, trying to force Americans to accept it, and they're fighting back. This is good to see, and thanks for that good news, Fred.
You bet.
We'll see you next time on Reason and Company.
Hello, I'm Sam Rohr, president of the American Pastors Network, a growing national network of pastors committed to the authority of Scripture and preaching the whole counsel of God. We believe biblical obedience is the foundation for revival, and impacting our culture for Christ is our duty. For too long, the pulpits of America have been silent on the important issues such as marriage and family and assault on our liberty. Join us in the battle for truth on Stand in the Gap weekend, Sunday evenings at 6 p.m. on American Family Radio, and visit us at AmericanPastorsNetwork.org.
This is Walker Wildman with 8FR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
Walker, my prayer has been that our time together over the last few weeks would be an encouragement to you and your listeners, because I know we all pray that the gospel would take grip all over the world. And my stories and the needs that I've been conveying have been saying, what? God is redeeming the world. The people are coming to saving faith in unprecedented numbers, but the need is so great. And that's why American Family Radio and Bible League are teamed up right now to bless 16,000 Bibleless believers by the end of June. You've done that for 7,000. We've got 9,000 to go. And what this brother in Africa says is so true.
Giving a Bible to somebody is the greatest gift you can give somebody in life.
Hey, will you consider making a gift in honor of or memory of your father, since Father's Day is June 16th? Our goal, 16,000 Bibles, 7,000 there, 9,000 to go at $5 a Bible. Call 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD. That's 800-YES-WORD, or give at sendbiblesnow.org. Sendbiblesnow.org.
Welcome to Hannah's Heart.
So Hannah, she's just one of the women who did struggle with infertility in the Bible.
No matter who we are, we can be inspired by the fact that Hannah took her pain to God, and God heard her and was with her.
So when she was praying at the temple, she had been weeping and not eating, and her lips were moving, but her eyes were closed, and the priest was like, hey, why are you drunk at the temple?
Yeah. It can become an obsession when you want a child so deeply.
And desiring that baby and to be a mama. Every holiday, every Mother's Day.
This is not a show that's going to promise you a certain outcome, but this is a show that says, however God answers your cry, we know that He's enough. Hi, I'm Kendra.
And I'm Ann, and thank you for listening to Hannah's Heart on American Family Radio. If you're new here, we are a radio show / podcast that focuses a lot on couples who have struggled with infertility, miscarriage, but we definitely cover more topics than that, talking about adoption and foster care and child loss, and we talk about other ministries.
All the creative ways that God builds your family.
Yeah, right.
We touch on it here, and we just,
for sure,
we want you to know that Christ is with you, and He's more than enough wherever your journey takes you.
Yeah.
But we have a really exciting guest with us today, and a really cool topic. First, let me introduce our guest, and we'll jump into the topic. We have Austin Brooks, director of American Family Studios, who I had the pleasure of working with for about 15 years, I think 14 years, before God kind of transitioned me to be a stay-at-home mama, and we have traveled all over the U.S. and the world, producing things together. But Austin, what you may not know, one of his titles that he's the most proud of is he is the husband of Emily Brooks, who has been on Hannah's Heart. And no pressure, but your wife was like a killer show, like possibly one of the top shows that we have ever had, of just like speaking the word of God powerfully and effectively and sharing your all's a bit of your adoption story. So no pressure.
She's really good at that.
But yeah, just to kind of give you guys a quick update on their story, Austin and Emily adopted 2 precious children, and you need to go back and listen to that episode because God's hand is just all over it. And I think of all of the adoptive mamas that we've had on the show, like nobody quite glowed like Emily when she talked about. And like, I think a lot of people wonder, like, will I be able to love children if I adopt them? And like, we've had a couple people write in with those concerns, and I've sent them Emily's episode because I'm like, let me just tell you what God can do.
Without a doubt, she was just, those are her kids.
And of course, Austin glows and loves his children too. So, but we're actually here to have you to talk about something a little bit different today. So we've talked on Hannah's Heart here before about how difficult it is for a lot of couples who are struggling with infertility or miscarriage, or they're going through the adoption process, when they see everything that's going on in our world with abortion and just the disregard for life. When you're like, I will hold any baby that God will give me, and you see that disregard for life, it can be very crushing. So a little bit of a trigger warning of today's episode, but let me just say, any human being who has a heartbeat should be triggered by some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. But I have found, and Anne, you volunteered at a pregnancy clinic while you were in the thick of your infertility journey, but we have talked about how focusing on the needs of others really sometimes can help draw you out of that place of just that dark pit, and it really can help kind of focus your energy. And so we want to talk today about something, the Safe Haven baby boxes. So Austin, you produced a documentary for AFS. It will be, if it's not already, it's going to be very soon out on the streaming platform for AFA. You need to watch it. It's the Monica Kelsey story. What are we even talking about? Let's go there. And what made you want to do this as a documentary?
So with the overturning of Roe v. Wade a couple of years ago, we just started to think of what is the church's role now that the federal government has said this is not constitutional. And people often say, you know, you just want to make abortion illegal. You don't care about women outside of that. And so what are ways that the church can support women in crisis? What are ways that we can help these women who are in crisis? And Safe Haven Baby Boxes is one of those ministry tools that can help a woman in crisis. So every state across the country has some form of safe haven law, meaning that you can legally surrender your child. We don't call it abandon, we call it surrender. Legally surrender your child to a hospital, to a fire station. Those laws are already in place. But a lot of times when women go in and surrender their child in these situations, their face is seen, they're asked questions, they have to fill out paperwork, and a lot of times. And so what Safe Haven Baby Boxes do is they allow a box to be installed at a fire station, and a woman 24 hours a day, 7 days a week can surrender her newborn baby in that box. The box is air conditioned, it's heated. It is a hospital bassinet that's inside. There's a silent alarm that is triggered, and any woman who's in crisis that chooses to surrender their child in this way it's completely legal. And I think the biggest draw for this is that the women have anonymity. It's anonymous. They don't have to show their face to anyone. No one is seeing them doing it, and they don't have to fill out any paperwork. Now, with each box that is installed, when they open that door to place their baby inside, there is a bag that falls out that has it has some resources in there and information to help them know that what they're doing is legal. And it also has information that if they would like to fill out information about the baby, specific birthday or time, or any health history or anything like that, they can do that and submit that anonymously. So they've really, and these boxes are only installed at fire departments or police stations that are that have someone there 24 hours a day. And I think the last that I talked to Monica, the longest that a baby has waited in a box has been maybe 3.5, 4 minutes, and that's
Wow.
because the fire department, they were out on a fire.
Okay.
And the silent alarm was triggered and somebody came back from the fire. But usually if someone's there, someone is to that baby immediately, and ambulance comes, takes care. They take the baby to the hospital, they give it a medical check, make sure everything's okay, and usually within 24 to 48 hours that baby is adopted through CPS, Child Protective Services, and they find an adoptive family to take that child.
Wow.
So it is, I think what makes it different is that it allows anonymity. That's probably the biggest difference from that to safe haven law. Again, most states have safe haven law. I think just educating women on that, just knowing that you can legally surrender your child to a fire station or a hospital, that is half the battle, just educating women on that, because we're seeing abandonments all over the country in dumpsters and people leaving their babies in the woods and things like that. You can legally surrender your child and no responsibility on your part. So just educating women on what they can do in the safe haven baby box is an option that gives women that anonymity.
So you mentioned on the news seeing, abandonment stories. I had no idea how big of an issue this was until I watched the documentary. I got a sneak peek because I'm connected to AMS. You're gonna have to go watch it, but it really that was incredibly hard to watch. And since she hasn't had a chance to see it, and our listeners, can you tell them just a couple of the stories? Because I really think it helps our listeners understand really the dire need for these boxes.
Yeah, so they say that for every 2 babies that they find either in a dumpster or in the woods or abandoned somewhere, there are 3 that they don't. So we have numbers of babies, infants that have been found, but we don't know how many haven't been found. And so Monica Kelsey, when she started this ministry back in 2016 in Indiana, and there are safe haven baby boxes all over the state of Indiana. Since they began this ministry of safe haven baby boxes, there have not been any known abandonments in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
So Monica really takes it seriously to educate women. She does it on TikTok because she knows that girls that may be in crisis are likely going to be on TikTok, and she does a lot of talking and speaking and advertising on TikTok to get the message out, to educate women that you can go to our website, find a location of a baby box. But yes, it is an issue, and people often go, well, how bad of an issue is it? You may hear of one here in Arizona and one, here or there from state to state, but it's one of those things where it's like, if we can prevent that child from dying.
A lot of these are perfectly healthy babies.
They're perfectly healthy babies, yeah.
I mean, saving one baby is worth.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And Monica says that, a lot of the babies that are actually placed in the bassinet, the one reason why they went with the hospital bassinet is because these babies were actually being put in, still attached to the umbilical cord with the placenta and everything, because they're either giving birth in their car or at home, and they're panicking, they don't know what to do, and so it is just very desperate situations. And the safe haven baby box isn't ideal. Abandoned babies aren't ideal, but it's the culture that we live in, and this is just one way that we can kind of take a step in the right direction to serve these women in crisis.
I was just going to ask you about that. So what would you do for somebody who says, this seems to be encouraging moms as to have an easy way out, that maybe they would keep the baby or maybe they would go through other proper channels. How would you answer that criticism?
Well, I don't think that anybody is looking at this baby box and going, oh sweet, a way for me to just get pregnant and give up my child. Like, these are obviously situations that are dire, and women, we all make mistakes, we all make decisions that we regret, and it's just one of those things where it's a situation where the box is there for someone that needs it in that desperate moment. And the biggest thing, again, I'll just reiterate that to not have to be seen, because a lot of times women can feel shame and guilt for wanting to leave their child somewhere
And sometimes
unattended.
it is a selfless choice if they really are in a position where
They
can't
know
mentally or
I
physically.
am not able to care for this child. I don't have the
And the
means.
shame
funds.
can leave. Like, I'm not trying to encourage anyone, right, either to just abandon your baby, but like, what strength that has to be to choose that.
There's a difference between the safe haven law and abandonment. Like,
Right.
it is not abandonment when you do
Right.
this.
Yeah,
it
it's
is caring
surrender.
for the child.
It's
Yeah.
caring for the child. And actually, if you go to Safe Haven Baby Box's website, it's at shbb.org, or you can just Google Safe Haven Baby Boxes. But they have a logo that is a footprint of the last abandoned baby girl that was found in the state of Indiana. And they named her Amelia because they found her in the woods, and she was wrapped in like an aviation jacket. And so Monica heard about this, and they decided to make Amelia's footprint their logo as a memory of the life that she did have, because she was living until she was found deceased in the woods. And so and Monica herself, I'll just share a little bit of her testimony that if you watch the documentary you will hear. But Monica was conceived out of rape. Her birth mother was raped and gave birth, and Monica was adopted by a Christian family and grew up in the church and grew up in a Christian home, and did not meet her birth mom until she was, I think, 37 years old. But she just has such a heart for these babies that need a home, that are surrendered and sometimes end up abandoned where they shouldn't be, and they're not even given a chance at life. So Monica's testimony in and of itself is just an amazing part of this story of how Safe Haven Baby Boxes started.
That is incredible.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd mind to speak on this, but a lot of our listeners are struggling with infertility and loss themselves, and so to hear these stories can make you a little bitter and just like, why? I mean, like, I lost my son last year, and like, I would have taken good care of him, so why did this lady get the chance? So you, as a daddy who walked through infertility with your wife, how does this affect your heart now, getting to be a hero for these babies?
That's a really good question. I think the word that keeps coming to mind is surrendering to the Lord. And I think Emily may have talked about that. That's something that we often share with people, is like, we can't always understand why some people are blessed with an abundance of children when they're not really capable of taking care of them, and while others are just waiting and longing and just have such a desire to be a mom or a dad. Why does that happen? And it's like, God has a plan, and he is orchestrating everything. And you may not get the answer from the Lord when you want that answer. Waiting on the Lord and surrendering to his will, we have just found that abundant blessing just comes from letting go of our own desires and expectations and things that, the way that we think things should be, and they're not always that way, and just letting the Lord just kind of take control and surrender to him. You really do see just all of a sudden that blessing come. And even if it doesn't come in the way that you expect it to, or you may surrender and the Lord may never give you a child. But I think it's making Jesus enough and saying, even if it's not your will that I be a parent, Lord, you are enough to fill me and fulfill me, and to quench my thirst for whatever it is that I feel that I need.
That's so good.
Well, not only did you surrender to letting God write your story the way that he did, but you also, God laid it on your heart as you're discovering the Monica Kelsey story to bring a box here.
Yeah.
And if you know Austin,
Tupelo.
like I just saw a passion in your eyes every time you talked about it, and you just took so much initiative. Like, what did God do in your heart, and how did you bring it here?
Well, I'll tell you, when we went to Woodburn, Indiana to interview Monica, and just sitting and hearing her story and hearing how the ministry started and just how many babies have been saved, it just hit me at my core, because with our own adopted children, we don't know who, we know their birth mothers, but we don't know their birth fathers. And it just made me think that their birth mothers could have been in this situation. And but obviously just made very courageous decisions to give them up for adoption. And I just thought, this is something that every town should have just as an option. Even if you install it, you don't want it to ever be used, but it's there to prevent a baby from being left somewhere where it shouldn't be left. And so I came back to Tupelo, and I just was praying, talking with the Lord about, like, I don't even know, like, how do you get started? And I started just having conversations and making connections, and come to find out there was a group of people that were already trying to get a box installed here in Tupelo. So I made contact with them, and was able to just be participate in part of the fundraising portion of that. So that
A lot of the fundraising. You killed it, man. You are the reason that it was funded.
Well,
and reaching out to people and connections that you knew.
People that I knew, including AFA, and churches in the area that I knew had a heart for pro-life issues, and that I knew would jump on board with this.
You were the advocate, and like so many people would have stopped at, that's a really great idea, someone should do that, but like it's intimidating to come to a pastor and have that initial like money ask, or it takes time and connections. So you were obedient.
Yes, and being able, like, again, being educated and knowing how to talk about it. And it can be, some people, their initial reaction is like, a box, like, that's kind of, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
But
well, if you haven't seen it, it's hard to picture. Like,
it's hard to imagine, but it is really well crafted box. They're all handmade in Indiana, where Monica's Kelsey's headquarters are. She has a staff of people. They make them here in the U.S., and they take very good care to make sure they meet all of the safety specifications. And again, they're temperature, climate controlled, and the silent alarm, and everything is just done to make the baby as comfortable and as safe as possible.
Well, and if you're watching this on social media or on AFA streaming, we're going to see if we can get a couple clips from you to show them a little bit from the documentary as we're talking to see it. But if you're listening on the radio, you need to go see the documentary. And you can also go to the Safe Haven website, right, if you want to actually see what the boxes look like. What is their website?
Their website is shbb.org, shbb.org, or you can just Google Safe Haven baby boxes, and you can find all the information. They have all the locations on a U.S. map of where a box is located in every state. And you can also get information on, how do I bring a box to my town? What is the process? What are the steps to get that done? And they can walk you all through that as well.
Are there other ways to support the ministry if you're not able to bring a box? Or?
Sure, you can just give. And actually, when we were there interviewing Monica, she actually makes like tumblers. She decorates tumblers, and she makes Safe Haven baby box tumblers, and they sell those on the side to help fund the boxes and the building of the boxes. So there is also a place on the website that if you just want to make a donation to Safe Haven baby boxes, you can do that as well.
That is incredible. What a unique way to pour into, to take your hurt and to care about somebody else.
I want to say one more thing. They do have a crisis hotline that they have available for a woman that doesn't know what to do, or if you want to call and just talk to someone who can counsel you and talk to you and give you information on what you can do and things like that. And so that crisis number is also on the website. They will also, and I love this, they do not accept any government funding at all.
Wow.
And that is because they want to be able to pray with the women who call the crisis hotline. And so that is also available on the website, that number.
Well, we just have a few more minutes left in the show, but there's one more thing I'd love to ask you about that's actually not totally related to this, but we'd love to have both you and Emily on to talk about how God is continuing your journey. And both of you all are so passionate about the pro-life issue. And I just love the different creative ways that God works. But you guys have recently kind of started something new, because Emily said, I don't think we're supposed to build our family, but I just still have babies on my heart, Austin. What do I do with this? Tell me about that.
So with the organization that we adopted our children through, New Beginnings, they have an interim care program. It's not really foster. It's kind of caring for babies that are transitioning from birth mom to adopted family. And so we heard about this and we thought this might be a good way for Emily to get the baby bug, the baby fever, take care of that. It's just usually a couple of nights. And so we went through the process again to just get qualified to be able to do that. We have not gotten any calls for interim care yet, but we're on that list, and it's one of those things.
You had to do additional training, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we had to do some additional qualifications to do that. Very similar to basically it's the foster care qualifications, and so we did all that, and it's just nice to know that we can still be a part of New Beginnings. But we are both, people ask us all the time, like, are you done? I don't know if we'll ever say, like, we're not ever going to adopt again. It's just, again, it's surrendering to the Lord, and like, we feel like that our family is what the Lord wants our family to be at this point. Yes. And we're always open to whatever the Lord may have for our family. So it's just, you never really give a 100% answer. You just it's just always, you're just waiting on the Lord to see what he's going to do.
Okay, so to make sure we understand what interim care, that is a baby
was just born.
So a baby was born by the birth mother.
Okay.
And the birth mother has signed away her parental rights, and the adoptive family may live in another state. And they have to travel, and it may take a couple of days to get them here in Mississippi to Tupelo, and so that baby needs to go somewhere just for 1 or 2 days, and so
make sure that baby's being loved on.
That's right, and prayed over.
Love it.
And then you guys get to be the ones that give the baby.
Yes, and then we get the blessing of being on the other side of it and blessing an adopted family with a child.
If I had somebody to put a baby in my arms, I would want it to be you and Emily, because I just know that you guys would be praying over that baby, praying over the transition, praying over the attachment, and like in talking with Emily too off air, she has just said like that is our goal. Is
Absolutely.
To just really love on these adoptive parents and to be that transition, that grace, that oil that helps there not be a clog in the wheel.
She even ordered some onesies that have "For This Child I Prayed," and because that's the onesie. She's like, if this ever happens, like, I want to give the child in this onesie that has.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just love that God doesn't work the same way twice. And like, if you are open, like you guys were, to surrendering to God's plan, like, just watch the way he's going to write your story and the creative ways he can use you. But I'm so grateful for Tupelo that we have a box. Thank you for being obedient.
It's coming, right?
Yeah.
It's coming. It just got approved by the city, so
awesome.
it'll be installed in one of the fire stations here in Tupelo very soon.
Incredible. We are almost out of time.
Thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
Came on in just a few minutes time.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for having me. It's a joy.
And if you guys are listening and you're still waiting for God to fill those desires of your hearts, just know he is a creative God. Just say, God, I'm willing. I'm willing to be obedient. Just use me, and he will plant those ideas and opportunities in your heart, and it will be a really awesome story.
I think it's always surprising. So many guests that come on and have stories like this, it's always so surprising to see just how the Lord uses your story, that you thought was broken in the beginning, and how he's made it whole. Thank y'all for listening to Hannah's Heart, and we will see you back next week.
Americans, I'm Todd Starr. Stand by for news and commentary next. Louisiana has become the first state of the nation to require public schools to post the 10 Commandments in classrooms. The GOP drafted legislation mandates that a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments in large, easily readable font be required in all public classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. The displays will also include a 4-paragraph context statement describing how the Ten Commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. Now, atheist groups are vowing to sue Louisiana, alleging that posting the Ten Commandments is against the law. Should the case make it to the Supreme Court, well, things could get a little awkward. That's because there are 3 massive monuments to the Ten Commandments in the Supreme Court building. Here's how I look at it. If teachers can post rainbow flags and LGBT garbage in their classrooms, they can make room for the Ten Commandments. I'm Todd Stearns.
Fostering and adoption is not a Band-Aid for infertility. Like, it is a calling, and God can change the desire of your heart and make that so rewarding. It's the most beautiful, selfless thing. It's pure religion, but it's not a fix to I desire biological child. God has to deal with that in your heart separately.
Hannah's Heart, encouraging couples through infertility and miscarriage. Saturdays, 4 a.m. Central on AFR or on the AFR app. The 2024 Ten Commandments Project Speech Challenge is a great way to teach children and youth between 7 and 17 to lead a life that honors God. Just have them write a 3 to 5 minute speech on the topic, why are the Ten Commandments important? Then use your cell phone or other means to record them reading the speech and submit it by June 30th. Find out all the details and upload your recording at afr.net/10 commandments. That's afr.net/10 commandments.
To all of our friends on American Family Radio, this is Michael Brown, thrilled to announce to you that we have a brand new 30-minute daily equipping broadcast that will light a fresh fire in your life and will infuse you with faith and truth and courage to help you stand strong in the Lord. It's coming your way. 12:30 every single night, 5 days a week. Don't miss a single broadcast on the Line of Fire. I believe your life will be changed.
Scripture. I am Jordan Shambly, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Cedar Sark.
Good to be back.
It is great to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a little confusion earlier. I'm actually due to go on vacation next week. You thought it was this week.
I did. I got it mixed up.
Yeah.
I thought I was ready, so I was getting together just a best of something, from the past to cover since you were going to be out. And I got that all done, and I thought I was on it.
And you were. And you were. And there's just, you know what? You're just preparing for the further future.
I just took that one. I'm like, all right, let's change the dates on that.
There you go.
But I got all that done, and so obviously this is pre-recorded. We're not here on a Saturday.
No.
I mean, that's how we do things.
Yeah.
And so throughout the week, so Monday I was sick. I was out. I was dying. And then Tuesday I was working from home because I was still kind of in the recovery phase. And then I came in on Wednesday and I got that done. I was so proud of myself.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm getting things done.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then I said something to somebody else. I'm like, yeah, and I got to get this in because Jordan's not here this week. And they're like, I saw him going for his break walk just a minute ago.
Yeah.
Unless that is the ghost of Jordan.
You never know.
I don't
think.
think.
Doppelganger out there.
Yeah, I was like, he's got an evil twin? No. And then I came and talked to you, and I'm like, man, I thought that was this week. And you're like, no, next week. But luckily, you are always, since you're a writer and you're constantly putting out content.
Yes. Constantly.
You have an article that you recently wrote that went on the Stand blog, or was it in the magazine? Or?
It was. This is a Stand blog original.
So it's a fresh, brand new thing. So if you go to afa.net/the Stand, you can read this article titled. What's it titled?
It's. I don't remember the exact title because Dr. Ray Rooney titles the blog.
Yeah, honor parents even in difficult relationships.
Right.
So we're gonna kind of talk about that, and I'm gonna say the title because I would love for people to be able to go and read the original article and what it's like, read it, how you wrote it, and maybe even share it. There's a share link so you can share it. So go to afa.net/thestand and you'll find so much more there too.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of great writers there. I do think it is important to bring up that title because the article isn't about just the concept of, children obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right, honor thy father and mother. It kind of goes beyond that into difficult relationships. I really wanted to hone in on that because I feel like that's where a lot of the issues come up around this particular commandment. And it is a commandment. And I touch on that being like, look, this is not something that we can just ignore or brush over. We have to do something with it. Like there's a requirement here. It's important. But what does this look like in a difficult family relationship?
I actually have some thoughts because if you're a video scroller like me, whether it be TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, wherever it is you are, so I see a lot of these people do where they're talking about situations, and a lot of them do things like the toxic parent, toxic mother-in-law, and like how they dealt with them. And I think there's a combination, whereas we're all human. It doesn't matter if your parents, I know my parents aren't perfect. I love them, and I hope that I have been at least somewhat of a good daughter. I'm trying. But I read some of these stories, and I'm like, I can't believe her mama did that.
Yeah, I know.
Cut her off.
Cut her off.
But if you start, and I guess listening to these stories, I've started trying to kind of just skip them.
Yeah.
Click not interested, so maybe I'll quit seeing that content because I think that kind of worms its way into my head. And this is not, I don't project this onto my parents because my parents, like I said, I know they're not perfect because they're human, but they don't do that kind of, like half that kind of stuff. So, but then you start getting that mindset. And it's like, I started thinking the other day, okay, but let's, that this is not to say that I think you should just let your parents walk all over you. Because in our time of life, in our target audience, we're adults. Yeah. And maybe you're in charge of yourself. Yeah. But those are still your parents. Right. And even if you disagree with them, even if you have a difficult relationship with them, we've talked about it before with when dealing with other people, there is a right and a wrong way to respond.
Right. Yeah, and it's not a very simple thing either. And by the way, I do in the article, and I think here in this discussion as well, we should, there's kind of two sides to, or two segments, I guess, to this issue. There's obviously a minor, like a child, a young child who's still in the home versus an adult child who is out of the home under their own authority. They're not taking orders as such from their parents. Those have there's different applications there. And it was interesting to find out actually the verse in I can't remember the exact reference, but when Paul reiterates honor children obey your parents in the Lord, the word there for obey literally means to listen attentively, which was interesting. And it really goes into the idea of parents are ordained by God as the guides, the teachers, primarily the caretakers and the teachers of their children. Their children don't belong to them as property. They aren't the robots that the parents can control. The children belong ultimately to God, placed under the care and guidance of the
You're just a steward of them.
You're a steward of them. And so Paul's instructions to
that's Ephesians 6.
Yeah, Ephesians, Paul's instructions to the children is, look, these are important people in your life, put there by God to teach you and to take care of you because you can't take care of yourself. Pay attention to what they have to say. Yeah. Now, that doesn't as much translate when you become an adult, although you should still pay attention to what your parents have to say. They have way more wisdom than you. But when it comes to being a matter of authority, it does shift where when the Bible's talking about honoring your parents as a child of theirs, or as an adult child of theirs, it's more talking about this care that you give to them in turn. In fact, the New Testament also commands Christians to take care of the elderly, especially the elderly in your family, and that means your parents when they are old enough that they can't really take care of themselves. That idea is reiterated throughout the New Testament, even in the Old Testament. This is a very important thing to God. Not that you, brush away all the things that they may have done in the past that are actually wrong. Not that you pretend that, they were these perfect saints and you revere them as such, but that you genuinely care for their physical well-being and you're there to care for them.
And here's the thing. We do recognize the sin nature that is there, and that not everybody who is a parent is automatically great.
Yeah.
Some of us were very lucky. I feel like I was very lucky. I know Jordan feels he's very lucky when it comes to his raising. And so we do recognize that in there are certain situations where maybe you can't have a relationship with your parent due to something on their end. But overall, for most of us, there is that call to action to, your parents raised you, now it's your turn to take care of them kind of situation. And one day it's, my parents are still, they're only in their 50s. And they're still doing their thing. They both still work. My mom's, they're enjoying being grandparents, not just me.
Right.
Thanks for taking one for the team. That's for my sister. Shout out for my sister.
Right.
But yeah, they're just, but at some point, they're gonna come to that point, and I watch them do it with their parents,
right,
where they have to start playing the caretaker role, and so eventually it's gonna be me and my sister taking that on, and I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be easier for me with the raising that I had. I cannot imagine some of the ones out there that have had horrible childhoods due to their parents, and then having to look at that. But I try to wrap my head around that. And I think I've probably brought this up before in dealing with certain circumstances. You have to remember who you used to be.
Right.
And that God had grace for you.
Yeah.
I've not lived a perfect life. I'm pretty sure if I'm reading scripture correctly, you haven't either, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
and God forgave me for all of that. So what is standing in the way of me forgiving the others in my life? Even the ones that are the closest. Those I think hurt the most.
Yeah.
A stranger or somebody I don't know that well, doing something against me is like, okay, I don't care about your opinion, but your parent or someone that closely related to you, that hurts to me way more.
Yeah. It certainly requires, I think, on the part of the child in the picture, humility.
Yeah.
If a child who had a bad experience with their parents growing up, and their parents were, at worst abusive, at least, they were missing the mark on some things and they unintentionally caused harm in one way or another. It does require that humility and to kind of let go of our own rights in a way. If someone hurts you, humanly speaking, you have a right to disassociate, right? Like we understand that, especially in this country, in this culture, the idea of free association. If you don't want to have something to do with somebody, you can just not, but in God's opinion, that doesn't really fly. And especially between a parent and a child, God holds that relationship as a sacred thing. And so navigating that requires that humility, laying aside that right of yours to just cut someone off. And now this isn't going to look the same for everybody.
Yeah. Again, we're recognizing people's sin nature. We're also recognizing that everybody has a different situation.
Yeah.
Much different.
Exactly. So, for me, honoring my mom and dad, we don't agree on everything.
Yeah.
I grew up, I became an adult, and I started forming my own opinions on things, and that's the way things go. My kids are going to go off and do the same thing.
But I've met your parents. They're great.
Yeah. And I've met at least your mom, and she's great too. And so, when we have these, these parents in our lives, they're, even if we disagree with them on some things, honoring them isn't that difficult. But in other instances, there are people out there who maybe there's not been this abusive relationship in the past, or these hurts that have been piling up, but maybe it's just they disagree on some things that are really, really different.
Yeah.
You know, they've got some opinions that could not be more opposite. And those can be some hard times too, where you have a parent who feels very strongly about this particular thing, and then the child grows up and forms a very different opinion, and these opinions cannot coexist very well. Even in those situations, it's going to require that humility to be like, look, I'm going to lay that aside. You know, I'm going to honor you. I'm going to respect you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we can't do that in our strength. We have to have the grace of God.
Yeah,
to do that.
I think my parents are pretty great.
Yeah.
And you know, they had their at the worst, they had their annoying moments. When my dad used to wake me up in the morning.
Oh yeah. Hey,
as a teenager, he used to love it to be 5 minutes before my alarm was going to go. I did not need help getting up.
Right.
I wasn't one of those teenagers. I could totally get up on my own.
Yeah.
5 minutes before my alarm would go off, my door would come flying open, my light would switch on, and he would start singing. And I would think to myself, and then probably say it out loud, I will not take care of you one day when it is time, you know, because I was a teenager and I was overly dramatic, but I was like, yeah, that's like, but you know, so I mean, obviously that's the worst I had to deal with.
Oh man.
But I think for our target audience, we've said that it's like just graduated high school, going through college, just starting families, you know, so up till like mid-30s, that's kind of our target audience. And we've kind of reached the point where we've gone out of that like teenage mindset where, you know, your parents are trying to ruin your life. You're like, because they won't let you go, go spend the night with this friend.
Right.
And now that you're this age, that our target audience is, you're like, why would a parent ever let their child spend the night with another friend when they don't know their family or anything about them? So I'm hoping we could have some, you know, like, so if you have a problem with your parents, it's not based off of small, petty, childish things like it was 10 years ago. But so we've kind of moved past that. But then the situation I'm thinking of now is the situation you're in. You now have your own family unit.
Yeah.
You left your home, and now you're cleaving to your wife, and you have your own children and your own family unit. And you're real lucky when it comes to your parents and your in-laws.
Absolutely.
That everybody is decent, godly people.
Right.
And they have they understand boundaries and things like that. But now that you're in this new family unit, what if you were in a situation when one of your parents was a problem or a danger to your children?
Yeah, and that's a whole other dimension of this that can be really, really challenging. Thankfully, we haven't been in that kind of situation, and even in those like times where how parents have different standards for their kids, and for my family we have this standard and this way of raising my children that are kind of different than the way I was raised and the way my wife was raised. And so sometimes a grandparent can apply that standard to your children, and you know what? You just kind of have to make that call. If it's a problem, then you can address it very respectfully. If it's not a problem, it's like, okay, fine. They won't even remember that. Like that's not a big deal at all. But then there are times where, in other families, I can imagine if your parent is either not a Christian at all or just comes from a set of beliefs that you have left and you're in a different place, then it might be time to have those, look, I can't imagine how difficult this conversation is, but those setting the boundaries conversations where it's like, you go to your parents or your in-laws, which would be, I don't know which one would be harder. Both very difficult. But you sit down with them and just say, look, with all due respect, we love you and we want to make sure that this relationship is thriving. We never want to, have to distance and everything, but going forward, because I'm the one responsible immediately for my children and what they hear